My name is Sunita, and I am the verbal head at GMATVERBAL. I'll be the host for this session. And let me tell you a little bit about myself. Again, this is for those of you who are joining this webinar for the first time. So I have been in this prep industry for almost a decade now. And teaching, mentoring is my passion. It really is. I'm not saying this just for the sake of saying. You'll realize through down the webinar how passionate I really am about all of this. All right. I love helping students. In fact, I have tutored over 30,000 plus students. All right. All right. So that should give you an idea of how passionate I am. All right. This is something that I love doing. It's not just my profession. Having said that, let me just give me a moment. Let me wish all of you back. Okay, wow. Hi, Abdul, Ria, Nimay, Umesh, Anvesha, Sathesh, I think, right? Sai, Olabisi, Shraddha, Ameya. Yes, Ameya, I do so hope that I can teach you things in this webinar which you haven't learned elsewhere or earlier. Hi, Abhimanyu. Hi, Aditya. Hi, Rajavi. Nice to see you back again. Hi, Vibhor. Wonderful, guys. I can see a lot of you who were there with me in the previous webinars are also there, and then I can also see a lot of you who are I am seeing you for the first time. All right, so guys, straight away let me set the agenda. Okay, now I'm sure during CR, okay, for those of you who have been working with who have been solving critical reasoning question for quite some time, and even for those of you who are new to CR, okay, critical reasoning, I'm sure at one point of the time or the other, you have faced issues with pre-thinking. All right. Let me quickly ask you in the poll. All right. So here's the question. How many of y'all find yourself clueless when it comes to pre-thinking in CR? Okay. If you have faced the situation, you pick yes. And if you haven't, that's fine. You pick no. All right. So I can see at some point or the other, all of you have faced problems with pre-thinking. Can you also tell me what is it exactly about pre-thinking that bothers you? Like what happens when you have finished reading the stimulus? Like what goes on in your mind when you're supposed to do some sort of pre-thinking? What is it exactly that troubles you about pre-thinking? Can you quickly tell me that in the chat box, guys? And we'll push ahead this webinar where I'm going to talk to you what you can do, what to do in order to pre-think in the right direction. Okay, I'm going to come up with some frameworks. So hold on to that, sorry. And at the end of the webinar, I'm also going to share the PDF of this session with you. So guys, yes, what is it about pre-thinking that really puts you in a bad situation? Let me see some of the answers that are there. Hold on to it. Okay. All right. So Rahman says, hi, Amit. Rahman says, lots of information to digest and retain. Yes, Rahman. So one of the things that is very crucial to pre-thinking is you should have read your stimulus properly. We are also going to look into that today. Rajesh says, depending on the scenario which we are not familiar with. Yes, Rajesh. I guess it's easier to pre-think for scenarios that you are familiar with, but when it comes to, talking about some lizard in some remote mountain, it's very difficult to pre-think out there. I totally agree with you. Abhimanyu says, exactly what is missing or what is the main point for resolution. Basically, what Abhimanyu means to say is, it isn't very clear what am I looking for, right? You don't know what you're looking for, so you don't know which direction you should pre-think, correct? Nirnay, I'm so sorry, that's Nirnay. Hi, Nirnay. I take time to comprehend the situation. So Nirnay, once you have comprehended, then are you able to pre-think? That's the point. If you don't comprehend the situation, you're not going to be able to pre-think, definitely. Even the framework won't work, what we're going to discuss today. But are you able to understand the situation properly? Or do you think somehow the stimulus is not clearly understood by you? Olabisi is saying, if I can make assumptions beyond passage information. So Olabisi is all about whether certain assumptions can be made or not made. All right, Olabisi. So we are still looking at, you are not clear in what direction should you pre-think? What should you pre-think? Okay, given that the situation might be unfamiliar to you. Ameya says complete understanding of complex sentence structure is used. Yes, if complex sentence structure is used. So Ameya, simplifying that is definitely important, right? So what I could understand from most of your responses is you are clueless as to what or which direction should you start pre-thinking if the situation is completely or mostly unknown to you. Rajvi says, okay, Kush is saying the assumption you make is not there in any of the options, then you think you wasted time. So Kush, there's one small thing I'd like to add here. Okay, let's say that you were spending some time pre-thinking and you came up with an assumption. While you were coming with an assumption, I'm sure the scenario that you were thinking in your mind became clearer. Okay, now when you went to the answer choices, you realize that the assumption that you came up with is not there. But trust me, Kush, the time that you spent on pre-thinking that assumption would have given you, or rather should have given you, clarity about the scenario, and you should be able to eliminate the incorrect choices and pick the correct assumption even if you have not thought up that assumption. All this provided you read the stimulus properly, you thought in the right direction. We will talk about that. Rajavi says I get confused in options on whether it is out of box or the best assumption. Rajavi, let me put it this way. There is nothing called best assumption. Either it is an assumption or it is not an assumption. And it's not that the assumption will always have to be something which is out of the box. Not necessarily. Assumption is something which has to be necessary. So it's usually something that is there behind the lines, behind the scenes, but you cannot see it and you don't really know in which direction you should think in order to see it. All right. So we're going to talk about that today. Yes, Elias. Hi, Elias. I'm going to do examples. I'm also going to discuss a lot of things. So I'm going to give you 2 frameworks. Okay. We have more than 2 frameworks in the course, but really the time won't permit us to look at all the 4 frameworks. But I'm going to talk about 2 frameworks which you can use for certain kinds of questions. So Aditya, we're going to discuss, first I'm going to talk to you about the 4 different frameworks that we offer. These frameworks are for pre-thinking, and then we are going to discuss 2 of the frameworks in detail, okay? And we're going to solve some questions using those frameworks so that you can use the same framework when you are solving questions on your own. Clear? So let's get started, guys. Just be a little patient with me. Okay. So while doing research for the entire CR course, when GMATVERBAL was in the development stage, I came across some very common patterns. All right. And then I started to realize if a student has to pre-think for these common question types, there could be certain guidelines that could be created for these, for this pre-thinking. So what I realized at that time is, I kind of try to approach every question as a student first. So I realized that the pre-thinker's problems mostly was that the pre-thinker was not able to understand what to pre-think. You feel clueless. Sometimes you put your time and energy into thinking in the wrong direction. You spend time, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 15 seconds in pre-thinking, and you could be pre-thinking totally in the wrong direction. All right. That's one of the things. The other is you could come up with an assumption which is incorrect, or you say half-baked, half correct, half incorrect kind of sort of thing, and you don't even know whether that's happening. So these were the problems. And I thought at that point of time that how nice it would be if the pre-thinker knew that in this situation, I should be thinking about these aspects of the problem. All right. Let's say if I have a question which is talking about a plan and a goal, I should be thinking in this direction. If there could be certain guidelines that the student could follow, how nice it would be. And that was the objective behind coming up with the pre-thinkers framework. Okay. So all these pre-thinkers problems can put the pre-thinker or the student in a situation where ultimately you're just picking anything. Okay. So the solution was to come up with a simple guide. We call it the Pre-Thinker's Guide at GMATVERBAL. They are simple frameworks, or you can say formulas, or call it whatever you want to call it, using which you can pre-think more efficiently and effectively. So you save time and you improve your accuracy, both. Okay. Now let's quickly talk about the 4 most common construction types. And I'm sure for those of you who have been practicing CR for some time, and even for those of you who've been doing it recently, you will recognize some of these types. Now, let me give a caveat or a disclaimer right at the beginning. These are not the only 4 types of questions that come up on GMAT. I'm not talking about strengthen, weaken, and that kind of type. I'm talking about the construction of the question. All right. So you are tested. If any of you have taken the GMAT and you have gone through your ESR report, you will see that you're also tested on your construction of the CR question. So these are the 4 most common types, and we have come up with frameworks for these 4 common types of questions. Okay. Typical argument constructions. Okay, so these you already know: assumptions, strengthen, weaken, evaluate questions. These common construction types are found in typically assumptions, strengthen, weaken, and evaluate questions. What are these common types? First of it is I call it the plan and goal. Okay, now in these questions, usually a plan is put forward and the plan has a specified goal, an objective, and some details about the plan and the goal may be given, the mechanism through which the plan is supposed to be executed, people who are basically executing the plan, who is going to benefit, and things like that. The conclusion is usually about either the success or the failure of the plan. You'll be asked to strengthen that the plan will succeed, weaken the achieve the goal of the plan, and things like that. All right, so this is one question type. How many of you all recognize this question type, guys? Let me ask you in the poll. Hold on a bit. Let me reset the poll. So how many of you all recognize this plan goal type? Typical construction, very commonly found in GMAT CR questions. How many of you all have come across this plan goal type? All of you have, right? And I'm sure many a times. So I'll rephrase my question, guys. Hold on a second. Let me reset the poll. My question is, how many of y'all have come across a CR question which involves a plan that has a goal, and usually the question stem is asking you about the success or failure of the plan, support the success, support the failure, and such like. How many of y'all have come across such a kind of construction? Almost all of you, right? Great. Today we are going to talk about how to pre-think for such kind of questions. So hold on. All right. I'm going to come up with a very simple framework which you can apply to all plan goal questions. So hold on to that thought, guys. Great. Let me move ahead to talk about the other construction types in the question. Then we have this causality or causal arguments, okay, where such construction or such questions or such stimulus have a causality in the conclusion of the argument. Conclusion usually says this causes this leads to this happens because of this is responsible for this. Usually that's the language of the conclusion. Such an argument is called a causal argument. All right. And sorry, my bad. And what you normally have to do is, hold on a second, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, normally in this causal questions, you're asked to weaken the causality, strengthen the causality, evaluate whether it's the correct cause and effect, or identify the assumption behind the cause and effect relationship. All right. Again, my question is, how many of you all have come across such arguments? Let me again reset the poll. Yes, causal arguments. And I'm sure if you have come across such causal arguments where there is a cause and effect in the conclusion, oftentimes you have found yourself at a loss as to what to think and how to think, rather pre-think. Those of you who haven't, trust me, today I'm going to show you some arguments like those. And they're pretty common. Like you will find, let's say if you're getting 9 to 11 questions on your exam, at least one causality based question you're definitely going to get. It's that common. All right. Okay, so let me move ahead. So these are 2 construction types. 1 based on the plan and goal, 2 based on a causality or causal argument, where we are talking about a cause and its effect. Then you have what we call comparison scenarios. Such kind of constructions have two scenarios, and the stimulus draws a comparison between the two scenarios. More often than not, the question kind of says there is the advantage of one scenario over the other, or maybe a disadvantage of one scenario over the other. And then conclusions are drawn about which scenario is better, or you have to identify which scenario is better, and so on and so forth. So we also have frameworks for comparison, but today we are not going to discuss about framework for comparison or quant. We'll discuss two frameworks, that is plan and goal framework and causality framework. Okay, I'm sure you've also come across questions where your simple knowledge of profits and percentages is tested. Such questions, we call it quant based questions. They require you to understand about small quantitative calculations, and again we have, let's say, the profitability equation or the demand and supply equation and so on and so forth, which you can use here. Please note that sometimes a single question may be based on multiple construction. Like you can have a single question which has a plan and goal and which has a causality in the conclusion. Or you can have a question which has that two plans are being compared. So that's part of it is a plan goal framework and part of it is based on the comparison framework. Clear? So far, are you clear, guys, with me? Wait, hold on. Let me reset the poll. Are we clear about about these construction types? Are we clear? Okay, great. So in today's session, we're going to look at first two construction types. Okay, although our course teaches you all these four types, we are going to look at the first two construction types. Those of you who haven't understood, please understand, we are talking about different kinds of stimulus. All right, a stimulus which talks about a plan and a goal, a stimulus which talks about a conclusion which talks about causality, cause taking place leading to an effect, a stimulus which talks about two let's say two practices, two methods, any two entities, and there's a comparison being drawn between the two, and then quant based questions. So Shania, there might be a problem related to, there is usually a lag, and sorry for that, I can't really control that because that's all completely based on the platform. All right, so if there's a lag, I'm so sorry about it. All right, I think that was the previous poll that you are getting, Shania. Okay, so let's see, I'm going to try to avoid that. Great. So let's get started without any more ado. Now, there's one disclaimer I'd like to give, guys. So for each of the frameworks, first I will discuss the framework using a simple example, okay? And then I'm going to give you a question. You'll do both the questions, but first question will be a simple example because I want to explain the framework. So the first question, don't think that, oh, this is a very simple question. It's deliberately kept that way so that you can understand how to apply the framework. Then the next question that follows will be a difficult question where you will try out that framework, okay? So framework, we are going to talk about the framework for plan and goal arguments. Now, here is a question. What I want you to do is just look at the stimulus. I'm not going to give you any answer choices right away. All right. I want you to write down assumptions that you come up with based on whichever way you pre-think in the chat box. All right. Go ahead. I'm going to give you, how much time should I give you guys? Let me think. I think 2 minutes should be enough, given that you are not supposed to, I'll give you 1 minute to pre-think. I think that should be good enough. I mean, in the exam, definitely you're not going to pre-think for 1 whole minute. So look at the stimulus, look at that question stem, think of, pre-think and write down the assumptions in the chat boxes. You have a minute, your time starts now. Get going. So I'm going to give you some time to type out your assumptions. Let me start reading some of them. Rahman, I've already replied to your query. So sorry that, you have to. I hope again you can attend the webinar in the next week. Okay, Alabasi is saying the secreted liquid do not affect the plant growth. Only the pest cause the harm. Okay. Good, Olabasi. Good, very good. Ilyas says ants liquid will help farmers get better yields in the future. Ilyas, is that the conclusion? Sorry, is that the assumption? We're already talking about that the liquid secreted by the ants will ward off the pests. So that's an inference, right? The ants liquid will help farmers get better yields is the inference. It's not the assumption. It's something that you can understand from the given data. Assumption is something that is not explicitly given. Okay, Ilyas? Abhimanyu says pests are the only reason for bad yield and no other factor can harm the yield. Good, Abhimanyu, very good. The ant liquid will be effective immediately. Anvesha, ask yourself, does the liquid have to be effective immediately? Because the immediately is very relative. Okay, think about it, that the farmers have introduced the black ants. Now they are going to sow the seeds. Even now, so when you say immediately, when immediately? Does it mean the moment the seeds are sown or when the plants come out or what? So it doesn't have to be immediately, right? So it's not a necessary condition, Anvesha. Harshit says all the factors leading to crop production such as rainfall, etc. will not be hampered and remain consistent in the upcoming season. Very good, Harshit. Arushi says the ants work on all kinds of pests. Arushi, for the conclusion here, the ants need to definitely work on the pests that are destroying the rice crops. Okay, the ants don't have to work on all kinds of pests. That is not necessary. All right, all kinds would mean even those that don't hurt the rice crop. Then Himani says black ants will secrete liquids that will help in yielding. Again, Himani, it's given that ants secrete liquids that are absorbed by the soil and help the plants to ward off the pests. So again, Himani, what you have come up with is an inference and not an assumption. Akshat, they expect a food because they assume that the ants will help defend against all the pests. Again, Akshat, the stimulus does not talk about pests varying. So that itself is an assumption that you're making. And that assumption cannot be made because it goes beyond the scope of the passage. All we know is there are rice crops, they are devastated by pests. Now, these pests are all kinds of pests, some kinds of pests, okay? We don't know. So the assumption is that at least the liquid, here we are talking about that the liquid secreted by the black ants will help ward off at least these pests which hurt the rice crops. Okay, so whether the ants will help defend against all pests is not necessary. What is necessary that it should help defend against the pests that are devastating the rice crops. Girish says the crops are not harmed by the liquid secreted by the ants. Very good, Girish. Amit says introduction of black ants will give full yield. Amit, that is basically a rounding off of the conclusion itself. That's what we are saying. Therefore, the farmers are expecting full yields is like saying the introduction of black ants is expected to give full yields. But what is the assumption behind that conclusion? This is not the assumption. Arpan, that's a nice way of putting it. What you are really saying is nothing else is going to come in the way of full yields. So, very good. Umesh, secreted liquids by ants kill the pests and helps to yield. So, Umesh, that's an inference. It's given. Okay. The liquids secreted by black ants are not harmful. Very good, Pooja. Great. Shubham says ants by themselves don't damage the crops. Very good, Shubham. Black ants don't have any impact on the... So wonderful, Rajvi. Yield depends only on devastation by pests. Or in other words, Rajvi, what you're saying is the yield does not depend. The other factors on which the yield depends will not change. So I think most of you, Aparna, Ameya is also talking about only doing pest control. Aparna says pests is the only cause. So those of you who are saying that, you know, pest is the only cost or the only way that the only thing required to get full yields is pest control, you are basically looking at an assumption which says all the other factors that can guarantee a full yield will not change. Nothing will go wrong with those factors, right? Great. So by and large, guys, if I have not been able to read out all your assumptions, forgive me. Okay, let's move to, let me see if I get some new assumption. Just a minute. So most of you have given that pests are the only factor and the fact that ants won't hurt. Karan, that's a nice way of putting it. Very good. Okay. Very good, Shubham. Research is trustworthy. Very good. All other factors. Very good, Shubham. Diksha says will be enough to help plants and the ants will be there year after year. Okay, Diksha, that's also a nice way of looking at it, that ants will be enough. But then I think that's again an inference, because the research, if we look at the research is saying that the liquid will help the plants to ward off. Just give me a minute, guys. Sorry, just some throat problem. Okay, so more by and large, the two most common assumptions that we came across in different words, but that is a problem. If you're not very precise with your assumption, it could actually be wrong. All right, so most of the assumptions that you came up with, you could come up with, because this is a very simple scenario, and most of the time you know what to think here. All right, so using this scenario, we are going to look at the framework and see how it can be applied. All right, guys. So here goes. Now, if I give you, we'll come back to this. Now, as I told you here, this is very important. The framework that we are about to discuss will work only if you have read and understood the argument. If you haven't understood this properly, some of you were telling me earlier that you find it difficult to remember all the information, you know, retain the information or remember the scenario. Okay, and the framework should be applied during the pre-thinking stage. So let's say we are first now looking at the first step, and that is analyzing the stimulus. So most of you have read this, but I'll still read out to you to show you how the stimulus should be read. So always remember, it's easier to digest information if you read the information in small pieces. Okay, we have had webinars on RC and SC, and we have taught you how to read a sentence correctly in order to draw the intended meaning. So for all those convoluted and complex sentences, you should read in this manner that I'm going to read now. In order to. Now, the moment you say in order to, what leaps to my mind is, okay, there must be, they are going to talk about a plan. In order to do this, in order to do that, a plan and a goal. So just let me hold on to this. In order to protect their rice crops from devastation by pests. Okay, so somebody wants to protect their rice crops from being destroyed by pests. The farmers of Lesotho have decided to introduce a species of black ant. So that's their plan. They are going to bring, okay, these black ants do not currently exist there, but they have decided to introduce these black ants into the rice fields most likely. So this sentence, the first sentence, is basically a premise, okay, and we don't question this. This premise presents a plan and a goal. The plan is to introduce black ants, and the goal is to protect rice crops from pests. How that is going to work, we don't know yet. Let's read on. Research conducted on the ants. Which ants? These black ants. says. So remember, research is basically a third party finding, okay, and subject to doubt. So research conducted on the ants says that these ants secrete liquids that are absorbed by the soil, okay. So according to the research, the black ants secrete liquid. These liquids are absorbed by the soil. Then what happens? And these liquids help the plants to ward off the pests. And these pests year after year harm the yields. So lots of information there. Basically what it says is these pests reduce the yields year after year, number one. And these black ants are going to help chase these, kind of kill maybe, or somehow help the, avoid these pests. How? The mechanism is liquids will be secreted by the black ants, and that will somehow chase away the pests. And then we have the conclusion. Okay, so far we have another conclusion here, premise here, sorry, the second statement that contains a third party finding. Finally, the therefore tells us we are moving towards a conclusion. So therefore means because of what this research says, and because the farmers are going to introduce the black ants, therefore the farmers believe that the yields will be full in the coming season. Okay, so here we have, based on the second premise, the author draws the conclusion, right? So this kind of analysis is very important. Now, this is a simple scenario, so you might be thinking, what's the big deal? But imagine that if you have a difficult scenario, or if you have a convoluted scenario, if you piece by piece, if you understand what is the premise, what is the conclusion, what can be doubted, what cannot be doubted, and so on. All right, let's move to the framework now. This is where you need to pay attention. Okay, this question is based on the structure of a plan, and the question is asking us what have the farmers assumed while coming up with the plan. Okay, so assumption basically means what has to be necessary. So what you need to do for the framework, the first step of the framework is identify the exact plan. Now in this question, the exact plan is very clear, but sometimes in some questions it isn't very clear, but you have to be very specific about the plan. All right, don't get kind of bogged off by long sentences. Sometimes a long sentence contains the plan in just 3-4 words. The entire sentence is not the plan. So first step is you identify the exact plan. Here the exact plan is to introduce a species of black ants. That's it. That's the plan part. The rest of the sentence is not the plan. Okay. Next step is to identify the exact goal of the plan. Again, be precise while you're identifying the goal. Here the goal is to protect the rice crops from devastation. Okay, the goal is not to, literally speaking, the goal is not to increase the yields. It may be the ultimate goal, but in this case, the goal is they want to protect the rice crops from being destroyed by pests. So be very specific about it. Okay, once you have come up with the exact plan and the goal, there are 3 guidelines that you have to follow. Now, these are the guidelines along which you can think. You guys already thought about it, and this was a simple scenario, so you could think about it. But what if you couldn't? Some of you were not able to come up with an assumption, right? So the first guideline is ask yourself what happened during the planning stage. Okay, since it's a plan goal, what happened during the planning stage? Now, what information have you been given about the plan? The plan was made based on the research. The plan was made based on what the ants do. Okay, so whoever made the plan, they might have thought only about these things. Is it something that they missed out on thinking? They definitely saw that the ants secrete liquids, and these liquids will, ward off the pests. But will the liquids do anything else? Did they think about it when they were planning? So that's what you can come up with. Consider what is given about the steps taken to formulate the plan at this stage. Okay, you have to pre-think in that direction. Think of some unknown factor that would impact the goal. That means not protect the rice crops from pests. So the plan is based on the findings of the research, right? What if this finding is open to debate? In that case, the black ants may not be effective and the conclusion would break down, right? So we come up with assumption number 1. The author has assumed that the research findings are accurate and will work as expected. All right, now let me ask, so a lot of you did not think of this. Some of you did think this. Very good, Girish. So a lot of you did not come up with this, and this was such an easy thing to come up with, right? Remember, all third-party conclusions, unless and until the conclusion, the question stem is telling you to consider the third-party conclusion as your main conclusion. All third-party conclusions are open to debate. Again, one of those things that we teach you in the Karan is asking a question. Since the third-party research can be doubted, can another assumption be the research is accurate? Yes, Karan, absolutely. So when you are given these guidelines, it becomes easier to think of assumptions. That's the whole point. We want to make pre-thinking easier for you. We want you to know in which direction you should pre-think. Again, I'm saying, don't go by this question. This question has been chosen as a simple question deliberately so that I can actually demonstrate how you can pre-think. Okay. The next question, I will let you pre-think using these frameworks. So the framework, step 1 was come up with the exact plan. Step 2, come up with the exact goal. Step 3 has 3 guidelines. The first guideline is what happened during the planning stage. So based on that mode of thinking, the first assumption that we have come up with is that the author has assumed while drawing the conclusion that whatever the research findings are saying, they're all accurate and they will happen like that only. Things will work out exactly like that. All right. Okay. So guys, is this clear? Let me ask you this in the poll. Give me a moment. Is all of this clear, guys? So far, that's the first guideline. I'll also come up with the other 2. Great. Let me now move to the next one. Again, I'm telling you, think of a situation where you have a much more difficult scenario, but this still works there. The second guideline is what happened during the execution stage. So again, the plan has not been executed yet, but you can think ahead. You can think, what would the farmers be doing to execute the plan? Okay, what if something went wrong then? What if the black ants had some adverse effect, and that adverse effect kind of would impact the goal? So here, one of the things that we know about the ants is, they are going to secrete this liquid. Okay, so we can think ahead. As I said, they have just decided to introduce, but we can also there's no information given about carrying out of the plan, but we can kind of think ahead. So the passage talks only about one effect of the black ants. You can kind of think about some other adverse impacts. What about alternate effects that could affect the conclusion? What if the black ants start eating away at the plants? All right. In that case, the yields would again be devastated, but this time by the black ants. So assumption 2 is the farmers have assumed, or in this case, the author has assumed that the black ants themselves will not feed on the plants. Okay. This is assumption number 2, that the black ants will not start eating the plants. Another thing could be the plants absorb the liquid secreted by the ant, right? What if that liquid reduces the plant yields? And a lot of y'all came up with this. Yields would again be devastated. So assumption 3 is the liquid secretions of the black ant will not cause any harm to the plant. So the black ant itself will not eat the plant and destroy it, and the liquid will not destroy the plant. See, 2 assumptions we could come up with by thinking about adverse impacts during the execution stage. All right. Third guideline is, what is the connection between the plan and goal? Now, you don't have to think about all 3 guidelines, guys. You can use any one of the guidelines and come up with an assumption and be done with it. Look for a missing link that is necessary for connecting the plan to the goal. Any piece of information which is necessary for connecting the dots. Now here, the farmers are expecting full yields this season, right? And they expect the black ants to drive away the pest. Fine. What if something other than pest causes devastation to the crops in the coming season? Maybe what if some weather condition causes damage? In that case, also the farmers cannot expect full yield in the coming season. And therefore, that gives rise to assumption 4. The farmers have assumed that nothing else will cause any harm to the crops to reduce the yields. Okay. So let me end the poll and reset it. Let me see, some questions have come up, I think. Yes, Amaya, absolutely. The liquid might have. See, now you're able to think about those things. Very good, Girish. So my question to all of you is, did you understand how the framework was used? Did you understand how the framework was used? Good. Now imagine facing a situation that you're not familiar with and where you can pre-think along these lines. So you can pre-think, okay, let me see what happened at the planning stage. So what information is given in the stimulus about the planning stage? And then along those lines, think what is not given. What are the possibilities? Okay, at least you have a direction in which you can pre-think. You don't have to pre-think randomly or arbitrarily. Similarly, when you think about what happened during the execution stage, look at the information given to you about the execution or the mechanism of the plan and think along those lines. Similarly, if you have any other thing, anything else that connects to the plan to the goal. So here the goal is, the ultimate goal, the immediate goal is to protect the rice crops from devastation. And the conclusion is to get a full yield. So what is necessary for getting the full yield? What is necessary is there shouldn't be anything else harming the yields. That is the missing link. Okay, great. So I'm going to now bring up the answer choices for you guys. Hold on to your step 3 is answer choice elimination. So let me bring up all the answer choices to you. I have to go back a bit, so have patience, just a minute. Because I kind of deliberately did not give you the answer choices in the first instance. And here you have the answer choices. Let me quickly bring up the poll. Now all of you will be able to get it. There is the poll for this question. Go through the answer choices. Now this should be very easy for you, for all of you. Yes, guys? I'm just going to give you some 25 seconds for this. Okay, let me look at the poll. So each one of you so far, I'm going to count 5, guys. If you have not put in your answers, please put them in. Since there is a lag, so I'm not so sure. Let me count 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's see, Karan. We know that on an assumption, on the CR questions, you can only have one correct answer choice, and often there is an answer choice which is close. This question per se is not really very difficult. As I said already, it's deliberately kept that way. We're going to come up with a slightly more difficult question after this, where I'm going to ask you to put the framework to use. All right. So let's see what the polls say. I'm going to end the poll. 5% of you believe the correct answer is B. 8% of you believe the correct answer is C. 85% of you believe the correct answer is D. So here is, now step 1 was reading the stimulus correctly and understanding the question stem correctly. Step 2 was the pre-thinking, where we applied the framework and came up with 4 different assumptions. Step 3 is what we call ACE, answer choice elimination. Here, if you don't read the answer choice correctly, you will mark the wrong answer. Now, despite all the pre-thinking, despite me stating those 4 assumptions, some of you have still marked the wrong answer. Let's see what went wrong. In such cases, usually it's that you've not read the answer choice carefully. You have rushed through the answer choice, and in your hurry, you have marked the wrong answer choice. Let me go to the answer choices one by one. So I am again going to move forward. Hold on a second. I know, but you know, this framework, I mean, I've solved so many questions with this framework. In fact, I've had students who've crossed the 740 mark, especially because of their CR, and the CR improved because of the frameworks. Okay, let me, So here's the first answer choice. Okay. Choice A says the yields this coming season will fetch higher profits. So none of you chose this. The conclusion was not about profits, it was about yield. Therefore, this is totally out of scope, irrelevant, mostly actually. B, 5% of you chose B. So I'm going to discuss this quickly. Secretions of the black ants add nitrogen to the soil. The nitrogen helps in promoting the growth. Now, this is a strengthener, but does the secretion have to add nitrogen to the soil? We are concerned with the secretion finishing off the pests and that leading to the full yield. Even if the black ants don't add nitrogen to the soil, then also, if they are able to kill the pests, my conclusion will still come true. So this is not a necessary condition. Okay, if I negate this, if I say, I want you guys to look at this, the negated choice, this portion. Hold on a second. If I say that the secretions of the black ants do not add nitrogen, does it mean that black ants are not effective against the pests? No. Okay. So let me, those of you who marked B, are you clear why B is not the answer? Anvesha, the last part of the framework was the link. So the link here was between the plan and goal. What was the plan? Introduce black ants, right? What was the goal? Protect rice crops. And what was the conclusion? Farmers are expecting full yields. Okay, so the question is, what is the farmer assumed while devising the plan? Which means what is the necessary thing that has to happen for the full yields to take place in the coming season? So we have discussed about the black ants chasing the pests and all, but what about the other things that could go wrong? Okay, it's a crop. Rainfall might not be enough. There might be a drought. There might be a flood destroying the crops. So the farmers are assuming nothing else will go wrong. Yes, Ameya, good. So Anvesha, I hope that is clear. So Akshat is asking a very important, he's brought up a very important point. He's saying, wouldn't trying to figure out all the possible assumptions take a lot of time? Akshat and everybody else, you are not supposed to think of all the three guidelines compulsorily. When you are using the framework, you can, let's say, you cannot come up, you could not come up anything while thinking about the first guideline. Use the second guideline. Or if you can come up with an assumption using the first guideline, that's enough. Stop there. The guidelines are there to give you variety. While you're training, in your training stage, in your practicing stage, you should try to think of as many assumptions as you can. Train your brain to literally think in multiple directions. Okay, then only your brain will come up with at least one proper assumption. Akshat, does that answer your question? Anvesha? You're welcome, Anvesha. Arushi says, if an answer choice seems close, we try to negate. Yes, Arushi, for assumption questions, you can do that. All right. In the exam, you won't probably have so much of time to sit and figure out everything. But yes, you can use the negation if you have narrowed down your answer choices to the last two. Don't do it for every choice. That's not the point. Okay. So let's move forward with the other choices. Some of you chose C. Black ants are herbivores and are known to have a voracious appetite. Now, if black ants are herbivores and are known to have a voracious appetite, what does it mean? This choice indicates that the black ants might eat away at the rice plants too. Okay. This is a weakener. How can you mark this as an answer? Herbivores eat plants. Sorry guys, one second. Herbivores are plant eaters. If they have a huge appetite, then they could actually eat the rice plants. So this is kind of going against the assumption that we came up in when we were looking at the second guideline. So C is a weakener. If you have chosen this, that means you have not understood the stimulus correctly. All right? I hope you can see why C is wrong, guys. Okay. Let me now. So C is a weakener, totally the opposite direction. Correct answer is D. The rice plants are not vulnerable to the liquid secretions of the black ants. If this choice is along the lines of our assumption, number 3, sorry. We had assumed, right, that the farmers thought that liquid secretions of the black ants will not cause any harm to the crops. So this also we are saying the rice plants are not vulnerable to the secretion, and D is the correct answer. Okay, 85% of you got it right. The farmers have decided to go for pest resistant variety of seeds in the coming season. This talks about a totally different plan. All right, we are not supposed to talk about this plan. It's kind of going in the different direction of the premise. Premise is all about a different plan. Therefore, E is definitely not the answer. So guys, how did you like that framework? Let me reset the poll. My question again to you is, how did you like the framework? You can answer me in the chat boxes also. And if you like the framework, you understood it, answer a yes. If you did not like it or did not answer it, you can mark a no. No issues. Trust me on this. Use it on all the plan goal questions that you henceforth come across. It works for all cases. Once again, let me tell you, you don't have to use all the 3 guidelines. Okay? But our aim was that when you are clueless in which direction to think, then these 3 guidelines give you a direction. If you can pre-think using any one direction also, that's good enough. Very good. Shubham is saying that this is really helpful because it gives you what questions to ask. Absolutely, Shubham. In fact, when I was doing my research and when I was thinking, I was looking at the stimulus as a student would look at it, I was thinking, okay, I mean, what should I think? If I'm the student, how should I think? Where should I think? Where should I start? Girish says, I also noticed that some of the options are giving additional information instead of assuming the correct information. Absolutely, Girish. So that pre-thinking, thinking along these guidelines opens your mind up and you learn to notice the differences in each of the choices. Again, this was an easy question. Imagine the same thing happening on a slightly difficult question. But you know, the difficult question can also be made easy using this framework. So guys, get ready, all of you. I'm so glad you liked this. I hope the others have also liked it. Akshat, okay, so most of you are saying that you like it. Great. In fact, all of you are saying you like it. So happy. So here comes the question, guys. Ready for it? Okay. This is an official question. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. No, I want you to use the framework, guys. I want all of you to use the framework. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes to solve this question. Do not go to the answer choice without using the framework, okay? Spend that time. Do not go to the answer choices without using the framework. Use the framework, see what you can come up with, and then we are going to discuss the answer choices, okay? Go ahead. So here's the countdown. Please put in your polls if you haven't already done so. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, let me end the poll. I can still see some movement. Now, I would just like to point out some of you, I could see that had marked the answer even just as 1 minute ended, you know. And I was wondering if you had really used the framework or anything. And that answer was wrong, by the way. So the point is, solving a CR question in 1 minute, honestly, I think it's not doing justice to that question. This is an official question, 700 plus level question. And if you are able to solve it in a minute, then there is something that you have missed. I'm going to end the poll. The poll results are there for you to see. 12% of you marked A as the correct answer. 15% of you marked B. Okay. 21% of you marked C. 15% of you marked D, and 34% of you marked E. Can you see how varied and divided your answer choices are? Now, what does this mean? It means that a lot of you got the answer wrong, right? A very small percentage got the answer correct, which also means that you did not understand the stimulus correctly and you did not understand the answer choices correctly, guys. All right. So before I go into the details, all right, let's look at step 1, that is analyzing the stimulus. Then I will talk to you about the assumptions. Okay, here starts my analysis. 12 years ago and again 5 years ago. Okay, so we are talking about twice in the past. There were extended periods. There were extended periods means there were long periods. What kind of periods? When the Darfur Republic's currency, okay, so there is a country called Darfur Republic and the currency is called Pundra, was weak. All right. So twice in the past, for long periods of time, currency of Darfur was weak, in simple words. And then notice this colon here. And post that colon, they are describing to you what does it mean by saying that currency was weak. They're saying its value. Its value means the value of the, sorry, my bad, just hold on. Its here refers to what? What does this it refer to? It refers to the Pundra, right? So the value of Pundra was unusually low relative to means when compared to the world's most stable currencies. All right, so twice in the past, Pundra was weak for long periods of time. What does it mean? It means world's most stable currencies were relatively much more in value than Pundra. Pundra was weak compared to them. All right. So this is a fact. Okay. I'll write the conclusion later. So if I look at the first sentence, it presents facts about the past, right? Okay. It's a premise. Both times a weak Pundra, both times means 12 years ago and 5 years ago, Pundra made Darfur's manufactured products a bargain. What does this mean? Okay. Suppose you don't know what this means, made the manufactured products a bargain. But if you read on, Darfur's exports were up substantially. It means that the weak Pundra made Darfur's manufactured products something that was on demand on the world market. And Darfur's exports were up substantially. Darfur's exports increased. So in the world market, Darfur's manufactured products probably were cheaper compared to, that's the inference. So drawing an inference is very important. How many of you all did this? You have to ask yourself. If you haven't, you have not read it properly. So basically what we're saying is the Pundra cause, the weak Pundra. So weak Pundra is basically the cause here, the reason. And we are saying ultimately Darfur's exports were up. All right. So that's also a fact about the past. Okay. This is also about a fact about the past. All this has happened in the past. All right. Now, so this is all about the past. They're all premise. Now we are talking about current times. Now some politicians are saying that, okay, what are the politicians saying? So this is what the politicians are saying. In order to cause another similar sized increase in exports. So this is the goal. In order to cause similarly sized increase, that means the substantial increase. in exports, the government should allow the Pundra to become weak again. So this is what the politicians are saying should be done again. So this is the plan. Make the Pundra weak and therefore achieve a similarly sized increase in exports. All right. Which of the following, if true, provides the government with the strongest grounds to doubt, weaken therefore, that the politician's recommendation, which recommendation? This recommendation, if followed, will achieve its aim. What is the aim? To achieve a similar size increase. If we've got to weaken it, what do we have to prove? Let's see. So I'm laying out on the table. Sorry, guys. The conclusion. Conclusion is, in order to cause another similarly sized increase in exports, government should allow the Pundra to become weak again. Twice in the, and this is based on what? This conclusion is based on what? Twice in history, weak Pundra led to high exports. All right, it's based on that. Scope of the argument. That means what kind of answer choice am I looking for? I'm looking for any new piece of information that shows that weakening the Pundra will not cause another similar sized increase in exports, right? Since I'm supposed to weaken the recommendation, all right? Weaken, show, cast doubt whether the recommendation will achieve its aim. The aim is to achieve another similar size increase in exports. So I need to cast doubt and say that Pundra will not probably cause a similar size increase in export. Now, very simply put, if we look at pre-thinking, before I go into this pre-thinking explanation, I'm asking you guys, right? And you can answer me in the chat boxes, guys. We are talking about the current recommendation is based on the past, past, let's say, events. Okay. So whoever is recommending now, what are they assuming? All right. We are talking about what are the politicians assuming during the planning stage. Can you tell me in the chat box? When the politicians are recommending this or coming up with this plan, what are they thinking? They are basing the whole thing on the facts or events that happened in the past. So what are they thinking? Yes. We are looking at the first guideline. What are they thinking? When these politicians are currently very good, Akshat. Akshat, can you remove the private from that? Let everybody else see. Akshat is saying they are assuming that the past data applies even today. What Akshat really means to say is whatever happened in the past, all the factors are also going to work in favor of Darfur's exports even today. Pratik, very good. Pratik has said it shortly and sweetly. It will work this time too. Politicians are assuming that the previous events will repeat. Yes, Anvesha, very good. History will repeat itself is what they are thinking when they are coming up with this plan for now. Okay. Same says Shubham. The past occurrences would repeat even now. Very good, Arushi. The economic conditions are the same or favorable. Well, favorable is more important. It may not be the same. It can change a little bit, but definitely it's favorable. Okay. So that has definitely been assumed. Situation will not improve in future as well. Amit, which situation will not improve in the future? We are talking about the assumption that the politicians are making when they are coming up with the plan that we should weaken the Pundra again to increase the exports. So that is not the assumption. No other factors can help increase the exports except for devaluing the currency. Abhimanyu, we are casting a doubt on the conclusion. Will that cast the doubt? Okay, sorry. That is the assumption. No other factor can help increase the exports. Abhimanyu, that's not the assumption. See, the plan is not about any other factor, right? I'll come to that. I'll come back to that, Abhimanyu. Think about it like this. The plan that is supposed to be weakened here, because remember, this is not an assumption question. This is actually a weakened question. So in a weekend question, we have to see what the politicians have assumed when they are saying that this should be followed. They have assumed that weakening the pundra is going to be enough. All right. I think I understand what you're trying to say, although the words are not really very precise. Anushka says same applies to present. Yes. Karan says certain. Whatever happened in the past will happen. Oh, wow, that's nice. Ceteris paribus applies. Absolutely. Good. Muniba says they're hoping that when the currency goes down, the exports will rise like in the past. That is true, Muniba. That is the inference. But we are saying that on what are they assuming when they are inferring that, when they are concluding that? Okay. They are assuming that the whatever happened in the past will happen again. Very good, Imanshu. Nice way of putting it. All other factors are constant and same situations will repeat. No other external factor affects this time. Yes. Good, good. Good, Abhimanyu. The world's currencies would remain stable. So yes, Pooja, that is also a part of the other factors. Very good, guys. So let me just ask you guys this question. Again, the result, the polls are already there. So I think you guys can see that 12, 15, 21, 15, 34. Let me ask you guys. So how many of y'all were helped by the framework, guys? You're answering even before I ask the question. Let me ask you the question first, huh? How many of y'all were able to come up with the assumption with the help of the framework? How many of y'all? How many of y'all found the framework helpful in helping you think in the right direction? Great. All right. And this is just one example. You have similar such other 3 frameworks which work in your favor more or less in almost all questions. All right, let's move on. So that was one assumption that all of y'all came up, and almost similar assumption. Now, suppose I ask you, what happened during the plan execution stage when they're going to carry out the plan? So let's say they have weakened the pundra. Okay. Will the exports increase automatically? What has to happen for the exports to increase? Come on, think. What has to happen for the exports to increase? So one part is the other factors that were there should also remain the same. So other than that, what other things have to happen? If I want to increase the export, if a country wants to increase the export of something, what does the country have to do? Yes, Olabisi, demand on the world market. What if there is no demand for Pundra's manufactured products? Absolutely. Yes, Ilyas, good. Sibel is risk. Read the question stem. The question stem is saying, which of the following, if true, provides the government with the strongest grounds to doubt that the politician's recommendation will achieve its aim? So we don't have to support or strengthen the plan. We have to weaken the plan. We have to show that the plan, if followed, will not achieve the goal. Okay. Rajavi says there should be demand. Absolutely, Rajavi. Demand has to come. Very good, Abhimanyu. What about the other part? When we're talking about demand, what about the other part? I don't want to spell it out. Shubham says export should be cheaper compared to other items in the world market. Yes, Shubham. So that's talking about the currency of the other countries remaining stable. Come on. So what does the country have to, apart from the demand, what does the country have to do? You all of you are right about the demand angle. Very good, Anushka. Increase manufacturing. Very good, Pratik. Okay, very good. Akshat talks about competition. Competition should be weak. That's what I think you mean, Akshat, right? Very good, Kumar. Capacity to produce. So if we are saying that we want to increase the export, you need to make sure that you have enough to increase that export. Okay. Very good, Karan. Manufacturing should have the potential to increase production. Wonderful. increased production, says Amit, Rajesh. So see, the point is, when you're talking about export, think about, okay, you have to produce in order to export. Okay, if you're talking about export, think about demand, think about supply, think about price. These are the different angles that you can think about. Great. Wonderful. So that, see, ask the questions and you'll get the answer. All right. But see, so many of you all marked the wrong answer. You've already seen the poll results. Now, when I'm asking you the questions, you're able to come up with the assumptions. I don't think, therefore, you applied the approach correctly. But never mind, you will learn the approach. I will share the PDF with you and you can use the approach to solve questions in future. So let's move to the pre-thinking. Exact plan, or in this case, the recommendation is weaken the Pundra again. Goal is to cause another similarly sized increase in exports. Okay. The 3 guidelines, what happened during the planning stage? As you said, politicians assumed what played out in the past will play out again now. Okay, whatever. What happened during the execution stage? The manufacturing industries could not produce enough to achieve similar size exports. If we say something like this, it's going to weaken. If we go against this, okay, you know, if we go against this, if we negate this, then also we will weaken. All right. What is the connection between the plan and the goal? The demand and the supply. All right, there should be similar demand for Darfur exports. So see, when I asked you question, you came up with a demand angle. You came up with the enough production angle. You also came up with what played out in the past angle. And yet, so many of you all chose the wrong answer. All right. So if you are not using the framework, you will come up with some vague answers. Or if you're not going through the stimulus correctly, or if you're not going through the answer choices correctly, you will face problems. We explain the methodology, the method of approaching CR questions in that 3-step process. Analysis of the stimulus has to be done properly, then only the framework will work. Use the framework correctly, and then make sure that you're eliminating the answer choices with sound reasoning. Here comes the first answer choice. Okay, 15% of you marked A. How could you guys? See, what does it say? Did you understand what it means? We are saying several of the politicians who are now recommending that the Pundra be allowed to become weak. So this is talking about the politicians now recommending. Okay, which politicians now recommending? Made that same recommendation before. All right. Now, that means what we are saying is the politicians who are making the recommendation now, they made the same recommendation earlier. Does that by itself tell us that the Pundra will, this plan will not work? In fact, this kind of seems to tell us that the plan might work. If these are the same politicians, I mean, I to think this is absolutely not giving us any information. But if at all I want to link it to the question, the conclusion is basically saying that, allow the Pundra to become weak again, exports will increase. A is saying the politicians who are now making this recommendation made the same recommendation. So the same recommendation worked in the past. That means this seems to imply the recommendation will also work in the present. But we are not supposed to support the plan. We are supposed to weaken it, cast doubt. So who is making the recommendation is immaterial. At best, this is more of a strengthener. At worst, it's irrelevant to the argument. So guys, I hope those of you who marked A, okay, my question is to you. Let me reset the poll. Okay, my question is aimed to those of you who marked A. 15% of you marked A. Can you see why A is wrong? Yes, Karan, I am. Because this choice is not even how shall I put it? It's not even a close, I mean, it's not even weakening. All right, guys. So read the answer choice carefully. You must read every sentence, focusing on each and every word. This sentence is literally saying that politicians who are making this recommendation now made this recommendation earlier. It's like saying, okay, earlier if it worked, it should work now also. Is it weakening? No way. So I think the focus is required. All right, guys. My question, those of you who marked A, are you clear? Those of you who marked A, are you clear why A is incorrect? Don't worry if you got it wrong. No issues. We are all learning here. Don't worry, guys. But you should be clear why you were wrong. You should be clear why you are getting something right. Yes? Those of you who marked A, are you clear, guys, why A is not the correct answer? Great. Take this as a learning. Use it in future. That's the purpose of every question that you practice. Okay? All right, let's go to the next answer choice. Because we had, I think, 21% who marked B. After several decades of operating well below peak capacity. Several decades means at least 2 decades, right? More than one. So we are saying after 20 plus years of operating well below capacity means not producing or not working up to its maximum ability. Who are we talking about? Who was or is operating well below peak capacity? Darfur's manufacturing sector. So for the last 20 years or so, Darfur's manufacturer sector had been producing below their maximum capacity. But that same sector is now operating at near peak levels. So let's say for example, if Darfur's manufacturing sector, the max was, let's say, maximum capacity, I'm just using a figure, okay, was 1,000, okay. So in these 20 years, it was producing well below this 1,000. Give me a moment, guys. Okay. Orbit leaves you with a very different health. Okay. So for the last 20 years, the manufacturing sector was producing well below 1,000. That means it had the ability to increase its production, but now it is operating at near peak levels. So now let's say it's already producing, let's say 910 or 990 or something. So even if it wants to increase similar sized increase in exports, it cannot do that. So even if Pundra is made weak, exports may not see a similar sized increase. Why? Because Darfur may not be able to produce enough to export. So B is the correct answer. Very few of you got that right, guys. And I hope, so those of you who did not mark B, I believe you did not read it carefully. You did not understand the answer choice clearly. And therefore you chose the wrong answer. Because in the chat box, while we were pre-thinking orally, most of you came up with the right answers. All right, let's look at C. The economy of a country. Okay, so we're talking about the economy of a particular country, in general a country. What country? Experiencing a rise in exports. So we are talking about a country which is already going through a rise in exports. Does Darfur Republic qualify in that country? We don't know. We are not told in the stimulus that Darfur is already experiencing a rise in exports. And then we are saying the economy of such a country will become healthier only if the country's currency is strong or the rise in exports is significant. The economy of a country which is already going through an increase in exports will become healthier only when the country's currency is strong. Health of the country's economy is not the issue. The issue is, should we increase the Pundra, should we weaken the Pundra to achieve similarly sized increase? Will that work? Will that not work? Okay, so C is totally out of scope. We're not talking about the health of an economy. We're not trying to say that the health will improve or not improve. Health of the economy will improve or not improve. D. those countries whose manufactured products compete with Darfur. So we're talking about other countries producing similar kinds of probably manufactured products, all have stable currencies. If they all have stable currencies, and if we weaken Pundra, remember that time also the world's most stable currencies, Pundra's value was low. So here we are saying the similar situation will occur. This should actually be a strengthener, isn't it? 34% of you mark D, guys. Read it carefully. You were supposed to cast a doubt on the recommendation. You had to doubt the recommendation will achieve its end. What is the end of the recommendation? Achieve a similarly sized increase in exports. This is why I was saying that you should have the exact plan and the exact goal, because sometimes there is a confusion related to the goal and plan. There's a confusion related to what you're supposed to do to that. And that is why I always fix the scope of the conclusion. If you go back to the slides, okay, let's go back to the, look at this part. What are we supposed to do? Look at this. So you have not read the question carefully. You have not set the scope of the argument, and therefore you are choosing answer choices like D. D is a strengthener. D is basically saying that the other countries who are competitors of Darfur, they have stable currencies. So if Darfur's currency becomes weak, then Darfur's products will become cheaper. That means the politician's recommendation might work actually. So D is not the correct answer, right? Let me see if there are any queries. Okay, just give me a moment. Ilyas, okay, let me just go down. Himanshu says increase competence of product as compared to other countries. Okay. If capacity to produce is already at maximum, even if Pundra is low, we cannot export. Yes, Ilyas, absolutely. Ilyas says it implicates that internal demand remains the same, right? So no. Well, that's also an assumption that the internal demand will not be so high that they won't have enough to export. That's another assumption, Ilyas. All right. Very good. For answer B, yes. For answer B, for answer B, if we go back to B, Ilyas, just give me a moment. If we go back to B, all right, B is also hinting at the fact that internal demand is taking up whatever it is producing. Absolutely. And remember, in a weaken, strengthen questions, we're not looking at necessary conditions. If there's a slight doubt that is being cast by the answer choice, it is good enough. What does he say? A sharp improvement in the efficiency of Darfur's manufacturing plants would make, so this is giving us another way of making Darfur's products bargain. This way is not about weakening the Pundra, it's about improvement. So this is the method. Improvement in the efficiency of the plant. So this is a plan 2. To achieve, okay, they are saying you don't even need to weaken the Pundra. No need of current plan. Does that weaken the current plan? If I say there is another plan that works, does that weaken the plan? No. Just because there is an alternate way to increase the export doesn't mean that the current way will work or will not work. So E is not the correct answer, guys. This is a typical trap of GMAT plan goal answer choices. You mention another plan of achieving the goal. All right. If I say there is plan B, plan C, plan D, does it mean plan A will not work? No, plan A is not weakened just because there are other plans. All right, so E is incorrect. Clear, guys? Absolutely, Arushi. Very good. So I can already see that your pre-thinking ways are improving, guys? Yes. So guys, all clear about this question? Can we go to our causality framework? I hope this was a good learning for you. Yes, Shubham, definitely. But that is not what the stimulus says. It's just a recommendation, and some other plan does not automatically weaken the recommendation. Okay, great, guys. So I think all of you are waiting for the next framework. Now, as mentioned to you earlier, okay, just before we go into the framework, guys, just wanted to mention that I'm starting a crash course, online GMAT crash course on the 5th of June. That's next weekend. This crash course comprises, 25 live sessions like this only. And these 25 sessions will be both on verbal and quant. All right. And if you want to achieve that 700 plus mark before round one, this is actually a very, very good program where you can also, so I'll be taking the verbal sessions, all the verbal sessions myself. The verbal sessions will be on SC, CR and RC. You will also have the quant sessions taken by our quant expert. The batch is starting from 5th June. So the classes are held on Saturday and Sunday, 7 p.m. IST, 1:30 p.m. GMT. And you can register now. You can go to our website. I think I'll just share the link with you. One second, give me a moment, guys. There are some links which I'll share with you guys. Just hold on. So if you want to look into the crash course, there's the link for the crash course. And then you can also, there's a free trial link here, which you can try out the free trial version of our course. All right. And if you want to set up a call with our expert for some other query on any of this or any strategy or anything, it's a free of cost call. Then I'm just going to share the link for that too. So this is here's the link. All right, guys. So you will be given a 4-month access to the entire online course, both quant and verbal. Apart from that, you will get these 25 live sessions conducted over a period of 11 weeks. All right. And you will be good to go. So I hope you can, I mean, those of you who are interested in it, you can take a peek into the trial version. All right, guys. So let's continue. Just wanted to bring that up. So we're going to talk about the framework related to the causal arguments. Now, let me quickly explain what is causality, because a lot of you might not be familiar with this. In GMAT CR, the stimulus often contains a cause and effect relationship. Such a relationship clearly states that a certain event A causes a certain event B. So event A is the cause and event B is the effect of that cause. For example, let's look at this sentence. The unusually low amount of rainfall this year caused or led to or resulted in low production of corn. So in the above, event A is basically the cause, unusually low amount of rainfall this year. And event B is the effect, that is low production of corn. So this kind of cause-effect relationship is termed as a causality. Okay, and if you have such a causality in the conclusion, then only it is a causal argument. If you have a causality in the premise, that is not a causal argument. The causality must be there in the conclusion for this to be a causal argument. Let me explain. So far, is this clear, guys? Is this clear? It's very simple. I'll give you examples, but is this clear? Okay, great. Let me then move forward to the Okay. We know that an argument is made up of the premise and the conclusion. Thus, a causal relationship may be a part of the premise or the conclusion. But remember what I've told you just now, that if the cause and effect is stated in the conclusion, then only it is a causal argument. Okay, let's look at an example. The number of vehicles being driven on the roads has increased in the last 1 year, along with an increase in air pollution levels. So that's a fact, that's a premise, okay? This premise talks about two events that took place around the same time in the last year. Increase in the number of vehicles being driven on the road, increase in air pollution. This happened in the last year, right? Okay. However, notice that the premise does not tell us that a cause and effect relationship exists between these two events. It's not told us explicitly, that event A, that's given to us only in the conclusion. All right, but otherwise in the premise, we are just told that the two things happened at the same time. 1 second. Okay. So the author draws that relationship between the two events in the conclusion. I'll just bring it forward. Yeah. Thus, the exhaust from the vehicles must have led to the increase in pollution level. So the author is assuming that event A must have been the cause for event B. Okay. Now, what is the author assuming? This kind of conclusion, if it is there in an argument, then we call that argument a causal argument. All right. Clear over here, guys? So let's now look at what are the assumptions the author makes while drawing this cause and effect relationship. Is this clear to all of you guys? Let me look at the chat. Okay. So is this clear? Again, I'm using a very simple example. Is this clear? Great. Okay. Now let's look at the assumptions that are there behind causal arguments. And the good thing is, the assumptions are always the same behind a causal argument. What are the assumptions the author makes while drawing a cause-effect relationship between these two events? Let's see. The author assumes that event A must have happened before event B, isn't it? In the previous statement, it's not told to us that the increase happened first. It's just given that during the last year, the two things happened. But the author is assuming that the increase in the vehicles being driven on the road must have happened first, and then only the increase in the air pollution took place. Okay. If event A did not happen first, it cannot be the cause of event B. Similarly, assumption 2, nothing other than event A caused B. In other words, there is no alternate cause that caused event B, right? Say, for example, the increase in the air pollution could have happened because of lots of manufacturing industries coming up. But the author is assuming that that didn't happen. No other thing caused the increase in air pollution except for the increase in the number of vehicles being driven on the road. That's the second assumption. That's a central assumption behind all causal arguments. Event A must have happened before event B. There is no other alternate cause. And the third assumption is there is no reverse causality. The effect did not lead to the cause. So in this case, increased air pollution did not lead to an increase in the number of vehicles. That means people did not start driving more vehicles because there was an increase in air pollution. Okay. If you negate any one of the assumptions, the causality in the conclusion will not hold true. For example, if we say that event A did not happen before event B, then it cannot be the cause and effect relationship in that argument. If we say that some other cause was there, then again your conclusion will break down. If we show that the effect, that is event B, led to event A, then also your conclusion will break down. Okay. So in GMAT, most of the causal arguments are found in strengthen and weaken questions or even evaluate question. All right. And in a causal argument, the conclusion contains a cause and effect relationship. I'm saying once again. Core assumption is there is no other cause that is responsible for the stated effect. So the framework is identify the causality first. What is the cause? Say X is the cause and term the effect as Y. So guideline 1 is X happened before Y. That means no other relationship or correlation exists between X and Y. It was not a coincidence, for example. Okay, the two events could not have happened because of a third common cause. These are the basic assumptions that are made when looking at a causal argument. So guideline 1 is X must have happened before Y. Guideline 2, nothing else caused Y. That is no alternate cause. So you have to, that is how you will pre-think. If there were any other cause, then the author could not have arrived at that conclusion. Guideline 3 is there is no reverse causality. Y could not have caused X. All right. So that is what you will look at when you are trying to look at the, so that's the framework basically. Identify the causality, number 1. Then look at these 3 guidelines. Again, guideline 1, sorry, my bad. Guideline 1, guideline 2, and guideline 3. So if you're trying to weaken, you have to think the opposite. If you're trying to strengthen, you have to think in this direction. Strengthen, we also have a slightly more expanded framework. I'll show you later. Here is a question for you guys where you can apply that framework. Okay. If you want, the framework is here. You can take it down. I want you to give this question a shot using that framework. I'll just mute myself in the meantime. End the poll. So I'll just quickly start a countdown of 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Well, Ilyas says that's a tough one. All right. And I'm glad you liked the question, Ilyas. I'm going to assume you liked it. It's a GMAT whiz question, one that I myself, I mean, all the questions on GMAT and the entire course has been made by me, but this is a particularly favorite question. Girish, let me just see what you're saying. So, Girish, are you referring to the previous question? Are you referring to the previous question? Okay, guys, I think Girish just give me the answer. All right, but let me start with the application of the framework here. Let me end the poll and read out the results of the poll. You can see 26% of you marked choice A, 30% of you marked B, 8% of you marked C, 26% marked D, and 8% marked E. All right. Okay. Let me see what. Yes, Girish, there is a huge delay. Anvesha is saying, I found it hard to differentiate between the type of construction as this seems similar to plan code. Yes, Anvesha, you can try solving it that way also. But if you read the conclusion, all right, we are basically saying that the plan will increase the threat. All right. So we'll come to that, how to understand what kind of question this is. Let me quickly get to the analysis. So again, as I said earlier, you will be able to apply the framework if you have analyzed the stimulus correctly. At GMAT Whiz, we teach students how to read the stimulus in a proper manner, how to learn to understand the argument, how the argument has been built and all that stuff. Okay, so let me show you. 50 years ago, okay, we are talking about half a century ago, crocodiles were brought to the waters of Fauna County. Now, if something is brought to the and a place, it means that thing did not actually exist there earlier. So we have to infer here that crocodiles 50 years ago were not a part of the waters of Fauna County. Okay, they were brought there. Fine. Excessive predation, that means excessive hunting by the huge crocodile population, all right, now threatens the mena fish. Okay, so now the scenario is different. 50 years ago, crocodiles were brought. Now, after 50 years, the crocodile population has become huge and it is hunting excessively and it is threatening the mena fish. So there is a fish called mena in the water. And then you have the noun phrase, the only source of omega-3, which means this mena fish is the only source from which people get omega-3. And what is omega-3? It's an essential fatty acid for the fauna people. So lots of facts here, okay? If you look at this, the crocodile, so look at these facts, all right? We can draw the inference that local people are likely facing a shortage in their only supply of omega-3. See how the inference will, I mean, the inference may or may not help you later on, but you need to learn to infer. Sometimes what happens is, as a part of the assumption answer choice, where you're supposed to come up with an assumption, you're given an inference and you confuse the inference with the assumption. So I think learning to infer also helps. Definitely. It's one of the most important skills that you learn during CR. And this also helps you later in RC. Let's read further. The county officials plan to, so we have a plan there. What is the plan? To reduce the crocodile population. So they want to kill the crocodiles. They want the number of crocodiles to reduce. That's the goal. And how do they wish to achieve the goal? Introducing the Runa fish. So they are going to put another fish into the water, which contains a chemical highly poisonous to crocodiles, but harmless for humans. Okay, so Runa fish will be put in the waters. Runa fish will secrete a highly poisonous chemical. This will harm the crocodiles, but it will not harm the humans. And that is how they propose to reduce the crocodile population. Okay, so here we have the plan and, okay. However, there is a possibility the Runa will harm the small native lizards that live in the water. Okay, so this Runa could harm something else other than the crocodiles. Possibility. We're not sure about that. Okay. So the plan has a small drawback. The officials' plan, therefore, now because of this small drawback, may be good for the county people. So county people, how will it be good? Because it will reduce the crocodile population and the mena fish will now not be threatened and they will get their essential fatty acid from omega-3. So that is the part which is good for the county people, but the same plan will increase the threat to the native aquatic life. See, increase the threat. That means already there is a possibility of the threat. That threat is going to be increased because of the plan. Runa might cause harm, all right, and then we are saying the plan may be good for the county people, but the plan will increase the danger to the native aquatic life. All right. Now, the conclusion contains one cause and two effects. The cause is the plan. The effect one is good for the county people. Effect two is that the threat to the native aquatic life, such as the lizard, includes the lizard, will increase. All right. What is the main intention of the author, guys? Is this the main intention or is this the main intention? What does the author want to really conclude? Does the author want to conclude that the plan is good for the county people, or does the author want to conclude that the plan is bad for the native aquatic life? Yes, you can answer me in the chat box. Which part of the conclusion is the actual conclusion? The first part or the second part? Right. Effect 2 is the main conclusion. Yes, Girish and Kumar, threat to the aquatic life is the main issue. Fine. Absolutely. So let's move to that. Plan will increase the threat to the native aquatic life. Notice we are not saying the plan will threaten the native aquatic life. That though we already know that there is a small possibility. But the conclusion, the exact conclusion is talking about increase the threat. The plan will increase the threat, which basically means perhaps there is an existing threat, but this plan will increase the threat. You have to pay attention to that. Let's apply the framework. Cause, the plan to introduce Runa fish, which is poisonous to crocodiles. Effect, it will increase the threat to the native aquatic life, such as the small lizards, right? Guideline 1x happened before y does not apply here because the plan has not been put into action yet. So we cannot say that x happened before y. All right. Guideline 2, no alternate cause can lead to the stated effect. Now, what is the stated effect here, guys? The stated effect is the plan will increase the threat to the native aquatic life. This is the stated effect. So we are saying no alternate cause can lead to the stated effect. That means there is nothing else which will increase the threat. Okay, so the author is assuming that nothing else at present can cause an increase in the threat to the native aquatic life. Clear? Take a moment to digest that. Effect is the plan will increase the threat. No alternate cause means there is nothing else that will increase the threat to the native aquatic life. Along those lines, we can assume that nothing else poses a bigger threat or nothing else will increase the threat to the native aquatic life than the introduction of the poisonous Runa. Okay, fine. What if the native aquatic life is currently facing a bigger threat than the one from Runa? Let's say the small lizards are facing a bigger threat. Now, the lizards also live in the water. What if the crocodiles were eating the lizards? Then if the crocodile population is reduced, the lizards will actually be relieved, isn't it? Introduction of the Runa can save them from a bigger threat. In that case, introduction of the Runa will not increase the threat, it will decrease the threat. And then a conclusion will break down. Okay, so it is an assumption that the native aquatic life is not facing any threat from the crocodile. Okay, that is not the bigger threat. That is not threatening the. No reverse causality. The author also assumes that the small lizard will not cause any threat to Runa fish. The opposite will not happen. If the opposite happens, that the small lizards somehow destroy the Runa or something, then the conclusion will break down. So we have come up with two assumptions, guys. Can you see that? Okay, let me see some of your comments, guys. Arushi, effect 1 is, we shouldn't say the effect 1 is not relevant. The point is, what is the author's main intention? Does the author want to talk about the success of the plan, or is the author concerned about the let's say the side effects of the plan? That's what you have to decide. So we are not trying to identify the issue about the plan will be successful or not for the county people. That the author is saying that county people will benefit. County people will benefit means the author is assuming that the crocodile, the Runa fish will not harm the Mena fish. Okay, but what the author's main intention is that the plan is definitely going to increase the threat to the native aquatic life. See, if the first part was the main intention, then there would be no point of writing the portion about threat. That is how we know that the threat is the main issue. All right, Arushi. Olabesi, Arushi. Did you understand why effect 2 is the main effect communicated? We shouldn't say main effect. That's the main intention of the author, the main message. See, when we say the conclusion of the stimulus, we are talking about the main message that the author wants to convey. So does the author want to convey that the plan is going to help the county people, or does the author want to convey that the plan is going to increase the threat to the native aquatic life? You have to ask that. So Ameya, what you want to say is there is no natural predation for the crocodiles. Well, that assumption is not a valid assumption behind the conclusion, right? There may be a predation, but despite that, let's say the crocodile population is growing, right? Girish, that was a good pointer. The but there says that this is fine, but something else is the matter. Okay, good, Ameya, Arushi, Olabisi. Wonderful. So nice to see each of you helping each other. I mean, sorry, that's wrong English. So nice to see, each one of you helping the other. Great. Wonderful. Let's now move to answer choice elimination. The officials have not been able to come up with an alternative plan. Is that an assumption? Does it have to be true that they have not come up with an alternative plan to reduce crocodile population? Maybe they have, but they don't want to use it. The point here is not the alternative plan. See, alternative cause and alternative plan are two different things. Alternative cause is when we are talking about what is going to lead to the effect. Alternate plan means we're talking about a totally different thing. Maybe the officials have plan B and plan C, but that's not what they are putting into use. They are planning to use here, right? So therefore, there is no impact on the conclusion if we negate this choice. If we say that the officials have come up with an alternative plan, all right, does that mean that this plan is not going to increase the threat? No. Or does it mean it is going to increase the threat? No. Either ways, it is not affecting my conclusion. So A is out. Let me see how many of you all chose A. Let me quickly pop into the 26% of you chose A, guys. I hope those of you who have chosen A now know why A is incorrect. It doesn't impact the conclusion. Choice A does not tell me whether this plan, officials' plan, will obviously increase the threat. It doesn't tell me. It says the officials have not come up with an alternate plan. Okay. Maybe they came up, maybe they did not come up. Either ways, my conclusion stays. B. Controlled experiments have proved the ability of the Runa to bring down the crocodile population by a significant percentage. We already know that the Runa contains a chemical highly poisonous. All right. Let's say there haven't been experiments to prove the ability. Okay. This is a fact. The way it has been stated, it's a fact. So even if there haven't been controlled experiments, it can still work, right? I mean, is it necessary for there to have been controlled experiments to prove the ability? Not really. So B is, remember, this is an assumption question. This choice definitely supports the success of the plan, but it is not necessary for the plan to be successful. If this is true, then it tells us that, okay, there are experiments to back the efficacy of Runa. But even if there aren't experiments, Runa might actually increase the threat to native aquatic life. All right. And again, the point is not that whether Runa will be able to bring down the crocodile population or not. The issue is Runa will increase the threat to native aquatic life. Crocodiles are not the native aquatic life. So B is again out. C. The Runa fish often prey on the eggs of small lizards. Now, we already know that the Runa might harm the small lizards. This choice tells us in what way it might harm. But again, is it necessary that the Runa have to prey on the eggs of the small lizards to increase? It doesn't talk about the increase in threat. And therefore, this is no new information. We already know that the Runa might cause harm. Remember, new information assumption is always new information. So C is out. The crocodiles currently do not face the threat of predation from any animals. Now let's look at this choice. If we negate the choice, we are saying the crocodiles currently face threat of predation from some animals in Fauna County. But we don't know whether these animals are land animals or water animals. All right. If some land animals are preying on crocodile, then reduction in the food supply will take place on introduction of runa, and then the wildlife will suffer. So let's say if you have a land animal which comes near the water to eat the crocodiles, if the crocodiles die, those land animals will suffer. But the issue was not land animals suffering, the issue is native aquatic life suffering. So in this case, no impact on conclusion. If predators are aquatic animals, then reduction of their food supply by killing crocodiles might affect the aquatic life. But this choice, then it would strengthen the conclusion. All right, it would still not be an assumption. So this is out of scope because there's a dual impact here. All right, I think a lot of you marked D, if I'm not wrong. Yes, 26% of you marked D. Yes, Shubham. Another plan does not change the efficacy of the current plan. Let me now go to the last. For the native lizard populations, excessive predation by crocodiles is not the most significant current threat. Now, this is along the first assumption that we have. If excessive predation by crocodiles is, suppose we negate this, okay? If we negate it, okay? So, excessive predation by crocodiles is the most significant current threat. Then kill crocodiles, reduce threat, and your conclusion would break. So therefore, by saying that it is not the most significant threat, we are basically proving that yes, the plan is going to increase the threat to native aquatic life. All right. Clear, guys? Let's see how many of you all, just 8% of you marked E as the correct answer. Are you all clear with this, guys? Wonderful. Now, when you want to, so this was about the assumption, using the framework for the assumption. All right. What you can do is now, if you suppose have a strengthen question, ways of strengthening a causal argument, now you can use this framework. So we already have 3 of the assumptions, that no possibility of reverse relationship, that is reverse causality. Y did not cause X. No alternate cause for stated effect. Z did not cause Y. You can also prove it by some, and this is for strengthen, not assumption. If you can show that where there was no cause, there was also no effect, that also strengthens the conclusion directly. Or if you can show that whenever the cause occurs, then the effect occurs, that will also strengthen the causality. If you show that the data that is used is accurate, you're eliminating the possibility of problems with data, that also strengthens the causal argument. So I have a question, guys. Well, Karan, I don't know. It was designed to be a 750 plus level question. That's what I intended when I made the question. All right. And I hope you guys like that question. We have lots of such questions, similar questions in our kitty. So are you guys ready for a question? Quick question on causal argument strengthening. Just let me know by the poll. Otherwise, I'll end this thing here only. Yes. How many of you all are interested in solving one last question quickly using this strengthening framework? Okay, I've got a yes on that 100%. So I'm just going to quickly, we'll be a little quick on this. Here's the question, guys. Here's the framework for you if you want to take a screenshot or anything. All right. 3 of the frameworks that we've already done, 3 of the things still apply, and the rest. No cause, no effect. If cause, then effect. Okay. There's the question. Go ahead, guys. Guys, so get ready for putting in your polls, guys. I'll do a countdown of 10. Wow, it seems we're going to have a happy ending after all. All right, guys, so here goes the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, I am ending the poll. Well, let's see how we can apply the, you can see the poll results. 7% of you got A, 30% of you marked C, 7% of you are marked B, and 53% of you marked E. Let's see what the answer really is. And then we will, okay. A certain cultivated herb. Now, you guys have read this and you know how to read it. So let me just summarize it. This stimulus is providing some factual pieces of information. There is a certain herb that belongs to a group of closely related plants. So let's say we have a group of closely related plants, and let's call this group X, okay, just for understanding. And then there is this herb which belongs to group X. That's what that sentence means. These plants thrive in soils which have high concentration of metals. So when we're talking about these plants, which also probably includes the herb, they grow in soils which have a lot of metallic concentration, high concentration of metals in the soil. Okay. For majority of other plants means other than group X plants, okay, outside group X. Outside group X. This high metallic content of soil is toxic. So outside group X plants cannot grow in this soil because the soil is toxic to them. Okay. This herb produces histidine in large amounts. Which herb? This one. This produces histidine in large amounts. Okay. In test tube experiments, the histidine acts on the metal. So this histidine acts on this metal, present in the soil and leaves them inactive. So X destroys, I'm just saying destroys for want of a better word, destroys this toxicity or this metallic content. Okay. Conclusion drawn is high histidine must be the key feature, which basically means causes, okay, that allows the herb to grow in metal-rich soil. So what we're really saying is the cause is production of large amount of histidine. The effect is the herb can grow in the metal-rich soil. So we are assigning histidine to be the cause for the growing in toxic soil. Understand that? So far clear, guys? Now, if you did not understand this stimulus like this, that means you have to read your stimulus carefully. Okay, great. Let's now look at the framework. Cause X. Cause is production of large amount of histidine. Effect is herb can grow in the metal-rich soils which are toxic to most other plants. Number one, we are using the framework that I just now gave you for strengthening causal arguments. Why did not cause X means the metal-rich soil was not responsible for producing large quantities of histidine. If that is the case, then histidine cannot be responsible for destroying the metallic content. Second, no alternate cause. For example, now this is an example, okay? The herb does not have any other special adaptation that can be considered as key survival tool. So nothing else helps the herb to grow in the metal-rich soil, you know. 3, no X, no Y. That means if we can show that wherever the histidine is absent in other plants, remember we have group of closely related plants and we don't know whether histidine is present in these plants or not. So if we can show that no histidine is present in those plants, but those plants are thriving, then it will show that histidine is not responsible. On the other hand, if we show that histidine is present in the closely related plants, it means histidine could be responsible for helping the plants to survive in the toxic soil. So if histidine is absent, if histidine absent in other plants that cannot thrive in metal-rich toxic soil, so no X, no Y. Similarly, if X then Y, that means histidine present in other plants that thrive in metal-rich. Which thrive in metal-rich toxic soils? We know group X plants, right? So if we can show that histidine group X has histidine, then also we can strengthen the conclusion, right? A, the herb can thrive in soil that does not have high concentration of toxic metals. Please understand, the conclusion is histidine is the reason why the herb can grow in toxic soil. This choice is saying histidine does in non-toxic soil. The herb can thrive in soil that does not have high concentration of toxic metals. So there, can you prove that histidine is destroying the toxicity? We can't prove that, right? So this is out of scope. Did anyone? So 7% of you chose A, and I believe you didn't understand the meaning of the choice. So read the answer choice carefully, guys. This answer choice is saying herb, thrive, soil does not have concentration of toxic metal. So if the herb is growing histidine, what will histidine do? There is no toxic metal only there. So we can't prove. We cannot prove. Okay, we cannot prove histidine's effectiveness because there is no toxic metal in the soil. So A is out. B, the herb's high level of histidine production is associated with an unusually low level of production of some other amino acid, but we don't know what the other amino acid does in that soil or to that soil. Okay, say because of histidine, some other amino acid is impacted. Does that prove that histidine is or is not the key factor? We don't know. Okay. Growing the herb in soil with high concentration of metal will, over time, that means after the growth has already taken place, after that, it will reduce the concentration. Maybe after that, if you're growing histidine, it might, but we're talking about what will help histidine grow in the first place. Our goal is to support the causality of histidine and growth. What happens to the soil once the plant grows or after the plant grows is not important to the conclusion. We have to show how does histidine in the first place helps in the growth. Does it help? A lot of you marked C, guys. 30% of you marked C. Are you clear why C is wrong? Are you clear why C is incorrect? Are you clear why C is incorrect, guys? In C, you're saying growing it over time will reduce the toxicity, but how will you grow it over time in the first place? Okay. All right. That seems to be clear enough there. D, the concentration of histidine in the growing herb declines as the plant approaches maturity. Declines, that means it was there in the beginning. But does that by itself prove that the histidine is responsible? We have to ask ourselves, if this choice is true, does it tell us whether histidine was responsible for reducing the toxicity? No. They just told that the concentration of histidine reduces. But when the concentration was high, was it the factor helping the herb to grow? We don't know. Okay. It neither confirms nor refutes the conclusion, and therefore it is out of scope. Very small percentage of you marked D. Correct answer is E, guys. It is in line with the fourth point. If X, then Y. The others of the closely related group of plants also produce histidine. Okay, so that means histidine present in those plants which grow well in the soil of metallic content. So wherever histidine is present, there the group of plants grow well in toxic soils. This is what is being said in E, and that supports the conclusion, guys. Clear? Any questions you have, guys? Any questions that you have? I hope you benefited from the framework, guys. I have already given you the links to the free trial version of our course. I've also given you links for, I'll kind of repost those. Just give me a moment. I'm going to put the links there. Hold on a second. So you can see the links there on the sticky message right at the top of your chat box. So Navang, yes, you will be, if you have attended this webinar, your, I think, email IDs would be there and you would be mailed the link to the recording of this session in a couple of days. But I'll be sharing the PDF at least with you. That will definitely be there. I hope you guys can see the links there. So while I am uploading the PDF, here is a poll for you guys. Any feedback that you have would be really welcome on telling us what we could do to improve the session to make it more effective for you. And if you can, please rate the session. I put out the poll there. In the meantime, if you have any other question. So Ameya, to be very honest, if I give away the other two frameworks, you will not be interested in the GMAT Viz course at all, right? So usually these are the two frameworks that we discuss. Sometimes we also discuss the other frameworks. It depends from webinar to webinar. Yes, Pratik, I know, but you know, if Pratik is saying that I should speed up, I try my best, Pratik. But the thing is, I always feel a little bit of, you know, if I am not able to answer all the queries, I feel a little as if I'm not benefiting the students. So I try to cover that up. But definitely that's taken into account, Pratik. Thank you for that suggestion. I do realize. So Olabisi is saying just the opposite, Pratik. Olabisi is saying, I wish the session was longer. I think 2 hours is long enough. Beyond this, in fact, we've already crossed that 2 hours. It's almost going to be 2.5 hours now. So I think the learning that you got from this should be enough. But Olabisi, you're always welcome to all the other sessions. We'll again be having another webinar next Friday. I think it will also be on, I think it would be also on either CR or SC or RC. I mean, either of these three. Not sure which one. Any other questions you have, guys, related to anything else regarding your preparation? Let me just start sharing the files with you. So I'm sharing the PDF of this session, guys. You can download it. You can see, go to the files thumbnail on the left-hand side of your chat box. Once again, reminding you of the crash course that I'm starting on 5th of June. And really looking forward to seeing some of you there. Let me see the questions. Pooja is asking, what is the decent verbal score we should score before taking the GMAT? So Pooja, see, to be very honest, decent is a very relative term. It depends on what kind of total score you're looking for. All right. To give you an example, let's say somebody says that I am looking for a 680 because that is enough for the college that I want admission to. Let's say that's a total score. So for a 680, you would need at least a verbal of V35. All right. About V34, V35, 35 at least. But if say somebody says I want at least a 700, then we're looking at a category of V37 to 39, more like V38 to 39. If you say, no, I'm looking at a 730 or 40 score, you're definitely looking at a V40 or V41. So in the mocks, when you are writing the mocks, you should be getting a similar verbal score before you take the GMAT test. A GMAT test is an expensive exam and you don't want to do a trial and error there. So make sure that you take mocks before that. All right. And in the mocks, the official mocks, see what kind of scores you're coming up. Scores also depend a lot on, the method that you're using, the approach that you're using. If you're using the wrong approach or random approach, you will never come up with a proper, you'll never know whether you're going the right way or wrong. You're most welcome, Pratik. We will definitely do one on RC. We did one. I think last week we did one on RC also. Well, I know somebody also got a V46, I think. V46 or V47 is the max. For verbal only, okay? For quant, I think it's V51, Q51, but verbal, I think it's V46 or 47. I think it's 46. You're welcome, Anvesha. Glad that this was a good, session for you guys. Would love to have your feedback, the others. So thank you so much, Pratik, Olabisi, Pooja, Anvesha, Nawang. I'm so glad, Pooja, that helped you. So if you guys want to know more about the crash course, the link is shared up there on this on the chat box. You're welcome, Ameya. Wishing all of you all the best for your preparation for your exam, guys. One bit of advice: never rush through your practice. When you are practicing, when you are learning, when you are practicing, don't rush through it. Okay. Rajavi, sources to solve questions on RC and CR. So Rajavi, well, apart from the official sources, that is the OG, the official guide, you can try the verbal reviews, which are also official questions. You can try questions from GMAT Advanced. You will get these on GMAT Club. You can try GMAT Club questions. All right. You can try these. See, number of questions is not the point, Rajavi. Even if you solve one OG and one verbal review, okay, that's good enough. It's how you solve those questions which is going to matter a lot. All right. All right, guys. So I don't see any more questions, and I'm sure all of you are dying of hunger. And so I'm not going to hold you guys back. See you again next Friday, 8:30 p.m. And if you have any of you have enrolled for the crash course by then, I'll see you on Saturday as well. For any other information, any other support, guys, reach out to Piyush on Calendly. You can book a session to discuss your strategy or queries with him. All right. It's free of cost. And definitely, I would say you should try out the free trial version of GMATVERBAL. Nawang, I'm already sharing the PDF. You'll have to go to the left-hand side of your chat box. There is a files thumbnail. If you go click on that, you will see that I'm sharing a PDF. Just download that. Okay, Nawang? So please do that, guys. Any other queries? I'll be glad to help you out. So Nawang, the maximum available is around V46, V47, but I have known hardly anybody get that. I've not known anybody get that. Just one of the experts. But mostly what, somebody who's scoring a 760 would get around V41, V40. A V44 I have known people to get. All right. And the recording will be mailed to all the attendees of this. The link to the recording will be mailed to the attendees of this session. Highest achievable verbal score. I think achievable would be definitely a V40, V41. That you can achieve with decent amount of hard work. V44, not so easy, honestly speaking. and we 46, 47. So as I said, I've just known one person get that. Because it's not just about the number of errors, it's about where those errors are, whether the errors are consecutive, what kind of questions you got wrong, you know, all sorts of things go into that. All right, guys. So I think all of you have been able to download the PDF, guys. Have all of you all been able to download the PDF? Have all of you all been able to download the PDF, guys? Can you answer me in the chat boxes? Navang, please download it so that I can end the session. Otherwise, this will just go on. I'm sure others are feeling. So, guys, thank you so much for a lovely interaction. A very good day to you if you have just started your day. And a good night to all of you. Enjoy your dinner. Thank you, guys. Navang, it's already being shared. I cannot, I mean, I'm sharing it. So it's not about resending. I'm already sharing it. Let me try stopping and starting again. Give me a moment. See if you can see it right now, Navang. Navang, if you can give me your email ID, I'll mail it to you. Right now, I'm resharing it. Can you see it? Just look at the left hand, you know, margin of your chat box. And you will see there is a file thumbnail where there is a poll thumbnail and all. Can you see it? Okay, I've taken note of that. Navang, I'll mail it to you. Go to the file thumbnail. Navang, go to the file thumbnail and click on that. Click on that. And you will find that I'm just click on. Did you get that now, Navang? Okay, guys, thank you once again for being such an attentive audience. I'll just end. I think our Navang got it. So good night and all the best.